Number 2 under the business is status update from the Department of Public Safety and Corrections, Office of State Police regarding the department's response to House Concurrent Resolution 4 of the 2021 regular legislative session. Good morning. Even though we all know you, go ahead and identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Lieutenant Colonel Doug Kane, Louisiana State Police Chief Staff. I provided to Jason, hopefully he shared it with you, a small brief on our response to HCR84, item by item. Would you like me to go through that in brief, or just answer questions?
Now, why don't you, so for the benefit of everybody that's here.
All right, there were 10 items contained in HCR84. The first 2 are outside of the purview of state police and in your hands as it relates to investigative timelines. So I'll start with number 3, which requires sustained complaints regarding a law enforcement officer remain in the officer's file for at least 10 years. We retain sustained eye investigations for the entirety of someone's career, so we do not purge investigative case files. After a person separates from the agency, it's actually archived. So we have long held that practice of retaining investigative files.
And there's no anticipation of changing that rule in the near future?
No, sir. Number 4, prohibit the use of chokeholds and carotid holds except when the officer reasonably believes he or another person is at risk of great bodily harm or when deadly force is authorized. And you should have the policy in front of you that outlines that prohibition clearly through the general policy guideline, a definition of a chokehold, and a prohibition unless deadly force is justified. Number 5, prohibit the use of no-knock warrants under certain circumstances. In talking to our SWAT personnel when this came out, they had made a tactical change years ago from no-knock warrants to an actual surround and call-out. So that's the practice that they utilize. Personally witnessed it Saturday night with the shooting of our trooper and surrounding the suspect's house. They engaged that practice of surround and call-out over the course of several hours trying to make contact with the suspect. And as you see, there is also, it's clearly identified in criminal procedure, so we normally don't duplicate in our policy what is clear in law. Number 6, adopt a policy to require any governmental entity that employs a peace officer to implement an in-service anti-bias training program as administered by Post. We contracted earlier this year with Fair and Impartial Policing, which conducted an implicit bias training for commanders, inclusive of the ranks from captain all the way to the superintendent. We participated in that training ourselves, and additionally they did a train the trainer for our training personnel, who then subsequently trained the remaining commissioned force. And as of this date, we're approximately 75% complete with training all of our commissioned personnel on implicit bias training based on the standards of fair and impartial policing. We did have to cancel 7 classes due to the COVID surge and hurricanes, so we continue, and we believe we'll be at 100% prior to the end of this calendar year.
And what is the frequency that would be done? Is it planned frequency?
We will continue to implement that into our in-service training annually. We take those high point items and reinforce it through updated standards, best practices, or any new case law that comes out that is provided to our troopers annually. Number 7, adopt a policy to require any law enforcement automobile equipped with a dash camera that has technology to automatically record upon the activation of the automobile's police emergency lights to utilize that technology. And you should have the policy in front of you. It clearly details the requirements for not only in-car cameras but body-worn cameras, which relates to number 8 on HCR84. Now go to number 9. To adopt a policy to require all enforcement agencies, correctional agencies, and institutions to disclose to prosecutors any and all information that may be used to impeach the credibility of prosecution witnesses, including but not limited to prior statements, prior criminal acts, or other misconducts. This has long been a practice of our Office of Legal Affairs as we reports. That research is done, and that information is provided to the requesting party. In addition, we took the liberty back in March 9th, 21, disseminated a memo out of my office that outlined all of our obligations as an agency and individually with regards to Brady and Giglio. Number 10, adopt a
For
policy.
those who may not be as familiar with Brady and Giglio, just kind of briefly explain what you're talking about.
So if officers, and this is layman, I will defer to my attorney if she wants to speak more, but basically if there is indications of false statements or credibility issues that come to light in a police officer's career, we have to reveal that to the court so that they have it in the course of their judicial process. And then finally, number 10, Mr. Chairman, is to adopt a policy to provide for penalties for noncompliance with post-reporting requirements. This has been done, continues to be done. There was an act passed that provides for civil penalties by Representative Bacala, which is now in statute. Subsequently, we went above and beyond, working with Post. We noticed that on the form for a employment status change to a law enforcement officer, there was no place to designate or identify to a reader that there is supplemental information. For instance, if somebody was under investigation, during the course of that investigation, they retired from the agency. All the block you could is retired, so if somebody else is looking to hire that officer, it just indicates that he's retired. So we work with Post to add a block that says supplemental information attached, which tells the reader or reviewer that there's more information that you need to dig into as it relates to this person. Post agreed with that, added this to the form, and it's now officially part of this Post form. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, briefly, as you know, Colonel Davis has been superintendent for about 11 months. We have worked hard to change the culture of the agency, improve processes, policies, training, operations, and HCR for us was just one step. We've gone well above and beyond, and I have some talking points to that I can highlight briefly to give you a perspective of what other reforms we have initiated within the department over the course of 11 months. We implemented a duty to intervene policy. That was always certainly part of our philosophy, but we codified it in policy. Subsequently, we're following up with that duty to intervene policy with a training program called ABLE, Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. It actually grew out of a program in New Orleans PD called EPIC. So we are in the process of working with ABLE to meet all the requirements to launch that program. And that will be an ongoing training program with our department. And I have some basic information I can leave with Jason or send to you all so you can see what exactly ABLE entails. Enhanced
If you
accountability.
don't mind, would you leave it with the executive director, and we're asking to forward that to.
I sure will. Enhanced accountability with the body-worn camera policy, we've addressed that. Expanded use of force policy, we did not only address chokeholds in our policy, but we banned the use of impact weapons to the head or neck area. We also mandated all of our troopers to carry a less than lethal option. So they must carry a less than lethal tool on their belt in the course of their duties so that they have that option to use in a less than lethal encounter. Mandated implicit bias training, which we discussed. Duty to intervene training program, ABLE, which we discussed. We are working to create a force investigative unit. This will be a specialized unit that will answer to the superintendent, that will investigate all use of force encounters and custody deaths by Louisiana State troopers or DPS officers. It's in the early stages. We promoted a captain a couple of weeks ago, so place. We have subsequent positions that will build out, and then this program will be based on national best practices. They will be subject matter experts in investigations, and we're excited about that force investigating unit coming online. You know, one of the things that we've struggled with in this department, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is technology. We have finally got some traction in that endeavor with the reports management system, computer-aided dispatch, e-crash, e-citation coming online, and what we are trying to do is build out these technologies and these solutions to really help not only us at the leadership level, but all of our supervisors and troopers in scene reports, scene dashboard analytics to help hold ourselves accountable and get a better idea of what is going on in the department and where our shortcomings are. So really leveraging technology solutions to better our agency. As far as reporting, we talked about the post-council report. We also have standardized our early identification system reporting. So if a trooper gets in a pursuit, a use of force, gets a complaint, those things are tracked, and once you reach a threshold, it tells the supervisor you need to look into this. Well, you know, one troop is doing it on a spreadsheet, and this troop has file cabinets. We've standardized that across the board with a single spreadsheet, and we are continuing to build out an electronic capability in that computer-aided dispatch report management system to have a early identification system built in there so that we can pull real-time analytics and better visibility. But in the short term, we have standardized that system. Recruiting, I've sat at this table before and talked about our recruiting efforts. Mental health, we continue to promote and expand our Trooper and Employee Assistance Program. We've had some real success stories with this. We actually deployed the team during Hurricane Ida. And as you know, many of our employees were significantly impacted, their families were impacted. And we deployed our team members across 3 different troop areas to touch our employees, to check their mental health, their well-being, their families, so that they could focus on the mission at hand, and that was supporting our communities that were affected by the storm. Accountability, continue to act swiftly with regards to investigative needs, whether it's excessive use of force or other allegations. Continue to communicate expectations through vision and policy, enforce standards equitably and fairly, and transparency. And we're going to do a better job, as we have, communicating to the public. We are also, as part of that force investigative unit, they are going to work with our public affairs section to develop critical incident briefings after a use of force incident. You may have seen this in other agencies across the country where, when they can and it's safe to do so, they actually show video that indicates what happened in the situation so that the public and the citizens we serve can see firsthand some level of what happened in that incident. So that's a continuing part of our force investigative unit build out. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members, I will rest and answer any questions you may have.
Any of the commissioners have any questions or comments?
Chairman, I do. In regards to the, thank you. Next year should be a new testing requirement. So this maybe is already in place or going to be in place, but I ask that the 2022 tests reflect a demonstration of understanding of these new policies and a practical application of the policies, reforms, and recent training. If they're getting the training, which we are at in service, and if it's being added to the policies, and as important as it is, and in fact it's new, I want to make sure that these new policies and new practices and reforms are in the testing, so we can, so that the employee can show a knowledge base of it, and we can judge their performance based off of their ability to practically apply it. So just want to put that out there before we start to plan 2022.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? I think that's it. Thank you for your presentation. portion of the legislative session. So the last time we were here, we got a report from the state police as to their response to that particular resolution. Actually, before House Resolution 84 came down, we have already been looking at some potential rule changes, and we're going to continue to do that. But if any of the commissioners would like to discuss anything about their thoughts on responding to Resolution 84, we can have a public discussion of that at this time.
I would like to get the department's comments, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on the amount of time that's currently allowed by the rules in regards to investigations, and maybe what's needed to, or the department feels to properly investigate complaints, considering the department employee and the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant Colonel Doug Kane, State Police Chief of Staff. So as it relates to 1 and 2 in the timelines, as you all know, State Police was part of the working group working with Senator Fields as it relates to HCR84, so we were part of those discussions and certainly agree with the recommendations made by the committee.
Can I ask why? Like, for example, the current time that we have and the rules that are in place with the 60 days versus and the 15 that can be requested. In addition to that, why do they need it? Is my question.
With regards to number 1 or number 2?
I'm not looking at them somewhere.
You're talking about the 60 versus the 75 days?
Yes, 60 versus 75.
There were lots of discussions with lots of stakeholders, including the Sheriff's Association, the Chiefs Association, FOP organization, legislators, community stakeholders, and I certainly wasn't there for all of them, but the department had representation, and we collectively agreed that this would be a fair path forward for all the stakeholders that were involved in this process. So we're going to support the recommendation that came out of HCR84.
Maybe the executive director can shed some light. How often had there been a request for you to grant the additional 15 days, and is that pretty pro forma if that request comes in?
Mr. Chairman, looking back, it only appears that since I've been executive director since 2017, there have been approximately 10 requests. It might even be a few less than that. So to extend beyond the 60 days, that it appears that all investigations have been able to be completed within the 60-day time frame, and only 10 times have been asked to grant an additional 15 days. So
do we know how many investigations have been undertaken during that time period?
I don't have that. I'm sure it's considered.
Any estimate?
I'm sorry. I don't have that. I don't have that number for you. I don't know if the department has an estimate on how many investigations in the last 4.5 years.
Rob, if I remember right, one of the issues was there were so many agencies involved and so many stakeholders involved that the 60 days with holidays, and it was a moving target. Some local jurisdictions have a holiday that the state doesn't have. So the 75 hard days was something that everybody could adhere to regardless of your state, parish, or local ordinances processes. So it was one standard for all law enforcement agencies across the state.
Listening in, just so I'm clear, and I believe I understand exactly how that process went. The extension of this additional 15 days, so to speak, is not that you don't have to use it, correct, sir? That just is there in the event that you need extra time to complete a thorough investigation, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But you do not have to use the 15 days if you can get this investigation completed in 60 days, correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
And that 75-day mark that was statewide, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So it was because I do believe that it was multiple agencies across the state that this was the happy medium for everyone. And I would say that on both sides of the investigation, for the officers and or the agency, whichever agency that may be. Am I correct in that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, our current is 60 days, including weekends, 60-day calendar days. This is what I understand is not including weekends, not including holidays. And talking with employees, no, just the opposite. Okay. I'm talking with the employees. They do, employees that are involved in IA investigations, the troopers. They basically said that the times they ran into issues is around the holidays. You got Thanksgiving, you got 2 days, you got Christmas, and you got New Year's. Those are 6 days that they said that they just lose. That is problematic in investigations, I believe. They also said they don't work on weekends most of the time. So I can understand that to some degree. But I don't think if in general, we should increase the time because every agency has agreed in the state. I think that based on the needs of the department and doing a thorough investigation, that we, based on the time limits that we currently have and maybe what's needed, but having a blanket agreement because everybody can accept it in the state, I don't think that's something that the commission just automatically should agree on.
Yes, Commissioner Rickett.
Jason, when you were asked those 10 times, is that pretty much a blanket? You would give it to them anyway?
They would present a justification. The most recent request was due to Hurricane Ida and the closures in the Baton Rouge area and statewide, and also the resources that were deployed statewide. And so it caused a drain on some of the resources, and therefore delayed some of the days that they were affected in looking at their investigation. So anytime that a request is submitted, there is a rational business reason or a business justification for such a request, and it typically involves a holiday or something of natural disaster or something that occurred. Like I said, in this last request, I did contact the captain of internal affairs just to confirm, and that was the explanation that was given, and it was also noted that there were many requests that IA processes or that's on their internal docket, if you will, or their internal. But it's very rare that we get a request.
I guess a better question would be, how many requests have you gotten that you denied?
In the time I've been here, I haven't denied one based on the information that was been submitted. It was all justifiable.
And Mr. Commissioner, if I may, we work really hard to do it within the 60 days. We believe that's fair to the employee and the department, but certainly there's extenuating circumstances, and we work hard to justify that extension to Mr. Hannon for his consideration. So they aren't arbitrarily made. It's usually some sort of justifiable business process, and he's graciously helped us with that. But our goal is always to do it within the time frame, and we will remain that.
I would expect it wasn't. What I was just trying to understand was, with all due respect to my fellow commissioner, I don't see this being some huge sticking point. Basically, the way I'm reading it is, y'all asked for it, and there was a reason it was approved. Now we're just quantifying it where it's part of the process. So, okay.
Yes, Commissioner Knapp.
Seems to me that having that 60 days there is helpful because it sets a deadline and then allows some flexibility. And we could expand it to include that if it ends on a weekend or a holiday, then it's automatically extended like the language that's appointed that's suggested here. And then have still have the 15 days, which kind of requires a justification for going beyond the 60 days, which I kind of like, and it keeps the pressure, it keeps the decision-making flowing for that reason. So I kind of like the way we've got it set up, but it does put a little additional work on our executive director there to do that, but it doesn't sound like it's a major thing. So
Chair,
Yes, sir, Commissioner Crawford.
I mean, from my vantage and being a former fire chief, and having to deal with this 60-day rule we have with local civil service boards too. We have the 60 days as far as firefighter bill of rights and those types of things. It was always challenging to make sure that you counted the 60 days and the weekends, and like Commissioner Myers stated, there were Christmas holidays, and you had to count off those things. And I'm telling you, if you got off a day somewhere, they would throw the whole thing out because you missed a day. And so I see validity in saying, look, let's change this to be 75 days from today. So holidays, weekends, nothing counts, everybody's on the same page, you count out 75 days and you're done. We remove the language in Rule 1219B that says permits the appointing authority to extend the 50 days. We take that out. We leave the additional rules in place to where the executive director, or there's a joint agreement between the appointing authority and the plaintiff to extend it for 60 days. So there's still, you give them 75 days, it's a hard count, everybody knows what the days are, takes into account all the holidays, and I understand the Christmas and stuff, but even if I'm a member, that's better for me. I can count on 75 days, I don't have to skip weekends, holidays, it's better for me if I'm the appointing authority. And so I would be in favor of changing the rules to say, hey, 75 days, taking out section B to extend that 15 days, because now it's built in, and leaving the other provisions in there that gives the appointing authority and the plaintiff an opportunity to extend it, or the executive director, for 60 more days if so necessary. Thank you.
And I just want to remind everyone that today, there's no proposed rule change.
Right.
Today, we're just kind of getting input today, and we'll be able to address these on its merits, if and when there's a proposed rule change. Yes, yes.
If I can make a few comments and kind of give you some background.
Go ahead and identify yourselves.
Michelle Gerard.
And I know who you are.
Yes, sir.
For the record. For the
I
record.
appreciate that. So I think Commissioner Crawford, in the State Police Commission rule, it is calendar days. So we have the straight 60 calendar days. The addition of the 15 days would be a big help to help you understand the process in state police. And also keep in mind the employee has 14 days to seek counsel. So we can't interview that employee potentially for 14 days of the investigation if they're going to retain counsel to attend their interview with them. And then the way state police does it in rule, we have a disciplinary review committee that entails all the lieutenant colonels. Sometimes it's difficult to get all those people to come together for a meeting, but the colonel has decided that's the best process to do it. The additional 15 days would probably reduce the number of requests that we have to make to Executive Director Hanneman, but I would suggest that you leave that in because most of the time the employees will agree to it because the outcome of the investigation is to get all the facts and to make a correct decision. So the employee can extend it, but the 15 days that the Executive Director would still have, the commission doesn't meet weekly, so we wouldn't have a process if we get in that time crunch. And sometimes things happen at the last minute, you get additional information that you need to follow up on, that the commission wouldn't be meeting in time for us to make that request to the commission, and it's a very limited time period. So I would recommend any rule changes would leave that option in there, and then to request an additional period of time from the commission members, if that makes sense to you guys.
So would you say, I know the House rule was 75 days excluding weekends and holidays. You had a 75-day period that didn't exclude that.
I think it's flat calendar days for state police right now, it's
Right,
flat
yeah,
calendar days.
that's what I mean.
Yes, and it would be just 75 calendar days,
Right.
same again, yes.
Any other questions or comments on any of the other aspects of the resolution? Okay. Well, what we'll do is the executive director and be in consultation with commissioners, we're going to come up with some ideas on potential rule changes, which will be circulated, and then we will promulgate them hopefully in time to address those potential rule changes at our December